Yes, hello and welcome everybody in another live stream session with Muhammad Naseem, who is a biologist and PhD professor, also working in one university. Welcome, sir, in today's live session. And I would request you to give us a good introduction about yourself, about your experiences and academic or professional life of past. So please, mic over to you. Welcome in the session, and please go ahead.
Yeah, yeah. Good morning or good afternoon, wherever you are watching. Thank you so much, Kiran, for having me on your channel and giving me this platform to introduce my disciplinary identity and also my expertise. So my name is Muhammad Naseem, and I did PhD from the University of Würzburg in Germany. I have been working at the University of Würzburg for almost now 1.5 decade. But equally, I am a professor of climate change biology at Zayed University in Abu Dhabi. And at the same time, I am a research fellow still at the University of Würzburg at the Department of Bioinformatics. Primarily, I belong to Pakistan, to the northern part of Pakistan. I'm residing just on the river Indus, in mountainous area in the northern part of Pakistan. And so from my discipline, as I said, I am biologist, but over the years, I expand my expertise or my understanding also in the direction of innovations and creativity, and a little bit more into product design, just to get a better view of the theme of the climate change. So focusing on the environmental sciences or the climate by itself, but then pushing my boundaries more into the humanities aspect of the climate. And so that's why over the years, I also got expertise in other domains just to understand the complexity of the climate a bit further. Thank you so much.
Uh, yeah, it's a pleasure to listen from your side, and thanks a lot for sharing your nice introduction with my viewers. Before I begin with some typical question about this particular topic, as you know that we are going to discuss about biodiversity, biotechnology, climate change, and its impact on people's life. People were actually confused when I did discuss about climate change, that I'm going to talk on it. And I have invited one biologist as well who gonna give his detailed introduction. So people were confused, like how come they're supposed to be an expert who would come up and would talk on climate change. So how do you see it? If you can explain a little bit more about being taking expertise to discuss and to talk and to work on climate change, so then it would be a little bit understanding for my those viewers as well who have a little bit confusion that is it possible that there would be an expert of climate change also. Please, if you can explain a bit about it.
Yeah, so climate change is a human mediated phenomena, what we call anthropogenic phenomena. And why we call it anthropogenic phenomena? So people, those who don't believe in climate change, who are basically in a climate denial, they think perhaps the amount of CO2, carbon dioxide, accumulated in the atmosphere, this universe has seen manifold more accumulation of the CO2. And if that was not a problem, why this relatively lesser amount, which is quite much, is a problem now? But people don't understand that the amount of carbon accumulated in ice age or in other ages, while this universe has seen different ages, now we are in the age of what we call Anthropocene. Anthropocene means that previously whatsoever destructions were happening in the universe, more specifically on the Earth, those were attributed to geological factors. So, from geological factors, I mean volcanic eruptions,
Mm.
earthquakes, tsunamis, such type of things, right? And but now more and more scientists, they are sure that it is human basically which is the epicenter of all those drastic changes.
Mm.
Um,
I
so
agree.
attributing that climate change to the activities of the human. Now, the human, if you see, is a species like many other species. We have plants, we have animals, we have reptiles, we have birds, we have different type of species, and all these species evolve over time.
Right.
So the question here is why we are talking of climate change and what climate change is, and why we are attributing that to specifically to the humans. What scientists are now called Anthropocene is due to the fact that it is after the Industrial Revolution in 2 centuries before, when the human basically invented the engine, where what we call the Industrial Revolution. And now the amount of CO2 accumulated in the atmosphere in just 200 years is unprecedented. So of course, like this argument where climate people, those who says, hey, there is no climate change because universe has already seen the amount of CO2 accumulated was manifold high, but that took thousands and millions of years. Now here we are talking just like 150 or 200 years, and that is unprecedented. Now, if you see, for example, who made this all these things, and sometime I'm giving a very simple example. Um, the food of the human. If you take a small burger from McDonald's or Burger King or any food chain, Subway or somewhere, right? And if you see the ingredients of a burger, for example, you have bread, you have spices, you have let's say plant
Sauces.
sources. There will be maybe in a very small cheeseburger or maybe chicken burger, there will be ingredients like 10 to 15 ingredients. And if you look to those ingredients, these ingredients are coming from at least two, four, five, six different countries. Now,
Mm.
all those ingredients are coming just to give human a taste, just to fill the tummy of the human. But if you compare, for example, that with the food of a monkey will not bother to go to the next branch if she finds food on the same branch and without adding any chilies and without adding any spices. Now, if you look, for example, to this whole phenomena, if it was not possible, just assume, if it were not possible to get avocado from Brazil or from African countries through ships or through air cargo, I mean, we would be eating the same thing like a monkey or a baboon or a bonobo or a chimps is eating. But look to this all these extraordinary discoveries, and specifically the automotives industries which evolved. And so everything that we consume, whether it's in the form of food, whether it's in the form of fashion, whether it's in the form of travel, that is carbon intensive. And so
Right.
that the amount of carbon accumulated in the in the environment, that basically is leading to unprecedented high temperature. So there is a
Mhm.
direct proportion between accumulation of carbon dioxide and temperature. Now some people are confused. The carbon dioxide per se, as such, carbon dioxide is not a nasty gas. It is very important. If you remove carbon dioxide from the universe, there will be no life because it is carbon dioxide that is converted by plants into sugars or into bread,
Yeah.
for example. And then at the same time, it is that carbon dioxide which the plants are converting into oxygen. So they are giving us oxygen through this carbon dioxide. But the question is the amount of carbon dioxide produced and the amount of carbon dioxide consumed, there is a big disparity. And that disparity, due to the thermal or insulation property of the carbon dioxide, is warming the universe. And if it is warming the universe, this is basically the warming of the universe that is creating problem. And when we go further, I will tell you how it's creating problem.
Thank you so much, and I would fully agree with you when you were just, giving the example of eating burger. More of that, I think it is for not a sort of an appetite, but it should look good to our eyes as well. Like they make it more sort of look beautiful for our eyes to to consume it, to take it. So that has when you said it, we can't eat like monkeys all day same food, and for that we really need some sort of difference of taste. And for that, like suppose only for sauces, if I just say they've just brought up from different countries, and there is a big inclusion of I'd say from human actually. When you said it about since when industrial revolution happened, and though carbon is also a sort of an essential gas, because like you explained the whole process of photosynthesis, getting food, and of course when plants they just make up the oxygen for us to consume it. So of course it has a sort of importance in it. But after industrial revolution, when what was happening, that there was immense and huge excess or a generation of carbon dioxide gas, then it becomes dangerous. Then when you can't control it, then it would be dangerous. And then we are coming towards climate change, a lot more questions. But I want to begin with, because I said it, that we are going to discuss about some main topics as well. And about, as I said it, like biodiversity. First, people need to understand actually what is biodiversity. And you gave the example of different species, whether like you can say from reptile side or bird side. Why, what is biodiversity, if for my viewers to understand and its importance? If you can just highlight few points on it, we will further go ahead with it. And I don't know whether would be, I think, because it's a huge topic, and I am planning not to just do one session on this biodiversity, biotechnology, because this is a present time issue where a lot more people are raising question. When you said it about carbon, when people they consume this roti and rice, they don't even know that they are actually consuming carbon in the form of their formula, if you just look at it specifically. But I'm not going to go in more detail there. There is one comment also, I'm just going to have a look of it. If something a kind of questioner or a comment, I would have a look of it. Until in the meanwhile, please go ahead for biodiversity, its importance, what is biodiversity. Please, mic is yours.
Yeah, thank you so much. And you already brought me to the topic. And so we were thinking, we said that it's basically the high temperature, the warming world that is creating problem. Now the question is how the warming of the world. So we established that it is basically CO2 due to its insulation properties. Like it basically curtail heat. And so the question is, if the world is warming, what's wrong with that? And we need to see, for example, and from that I will go to the topic of biodiversity. Now if you look.
Sorry to interrupt you, sir. Whenever I would post the question or a comment on the screen, can you also look at it?
Yeah, I can.
Okay. Yeah. So I have posed this question from one of my viewers. So then definitely I would request you to respond on that as well. Please.
Yeah. So let me establish this
Sure.
this concept. So humans or species, there are millions of different species on the planet, on the Earth. And when we say species, so what is a species? And technically, we define species as a group of individuals which can breed in nature and produce fertile offsprings. So any group of individual, for example, we have monkeys, and they will be mating with similar sort of monkeys, not exactly in the same color or is exactly in the same shape, but they can mate, naturally mate with a group of monkeys, and they can produce more monkeys. So this monkey is basically a species. Now, species are always in interactions. They are interacting with another species, they are interacting with their own species. And it is basically these interactions which are important. Now, why species will be interacting? So it's the same, for example, why I will be interacting with other humans, human to human interactions. So interactions are basically meant to fulfill our needs. I will not be interacting with anyone else if I do not have needs. I will not be interacting with a guy down at the basement in the bakery if I have enough food in my kitchen, for example. So interactions are primarily meant for fulfilling our needs. Now, same like economies, we have always extra, always
Mm.
surplus in our needs. And if we have surplus in our needs, then the best way is to give it to someone.
Right.
And if this is supposed to be, if we are giving it to someone, then we need to take something from those in which we are lacking. So species are basically interacting with each other, and these interactions are very important. Now, why these interactions are important? Because the ecosystem where different species are living. So we are taking climate at the species level, at the community levels, at the landscape level, and then we are taking from the landscape level to the ecosystems, and from ecosystem to biomes. So biomes mean where there is life possible is a biome. And then
Yeah.
we have split, ecologists have split this word into different biomes. For example, like tropical rainforest, tropical savanna. Then we have Mediterraneans, we have temperate forest. So scientists have split the world into different zones. Now these zones are basically bringing specific type of temperature and rainfall. And species living in that specific area, basically they have adapted towards what we call a natural adaptation of the species to the
Like
environment.
a ecosystem as well, like our ecosystem.
Yeah, but in an ecosystem, like, so for example, one ecosystem and another ecosystem and another ecosystem, and
Yeah.
that they are constituting a biome. Now coming back to the climate, so that we don't forget the actual theme. um, so species, as I said, species are interacting with each other, species A, species B, C, D, E, and they are very complex. So there is a network, what we call a web of interactions. Now the question is, these interactions are important. Now, if you take in any of the small species, whether it's a bacteria, it's a chimpanzee, it's a fly, for example, it's a bee. If due to some reason, due to any reason, if that species is not contributing to the interaction, it will
Will
completely change its
disturb.
own. Now, the
Yes.
question here, why a species will not contribute? So in interaction, as I said, there's a give and take. And there are interaction where one species is supporting other species. That's called synergistic interaction, like synergy. And then there are interactions where one species is inhibiting the other species, and that's called antagonistic interactions. And both are important for the ecological balance.
Yeah.
For example,
Obviously.
if the amount of ants or amount of flies is not eaten by the birds, now the birds are stopping their growth. If they are not eating them, then there will be a flood, or what we call like a plague population. Uh,
Yeah.
and
Too
then
much.
they will overpopulate. Sometime I give this as an example of Yajuj and Majuj. So this Yajuj and Majuj is nothing but something is outburst.
Yeah.
And so now the question here is, why biodiversity is important. Biodiversity, as you said, is nothing but the availability of different genetic forms, different species. Now, a species, I define a species a group of interaction which breed in nature and produce offsprings. But in reality, species is a box of specific genes.
Mm.
So the genes we have, the genes chimps have, and genes plants have, we have some common genes.
Yeah.
But then we have distinct genes, and those distinct genes are making us distinct species.
Right.
Now, the question here is, if the species is a distinct entity, then its contribution is also very distinct.
Yeah.
And if any pressure or any disturbance which is not allowing one species to contribute, give or take, it is creating the whole imbalance in the web of the interactions.
Mhm.
Now, the biggest factor, what we call Anthropocene, it is basically the climate change which is disturbing the life, the very existence or the very activity of a species. If due to the temperature, if that species is not functional, it is completely changing the role of it is completely revamping the structure of the web. Now, sometimes I'm
Mm.
giving this interesting. So, a species can be a linear species, like a species which is not that important. Every species is important, but less important. But then there are keystone species which play a very central role in the ecosystem. And sometimes I'm
Definitely.
giving example to the students. Like I tell here, I'm a professor in the university, a tiny professor in the university. If you guys do strike and close my office, it will impact a couple of people. But if you do strike and close the office of the vice chancellor, it will impact the whole university because he is taking important decisions. So he is a hub species, and I'm a linear species, right? So the question here is depending upon the nature of the species, whether it is a keystone species, a species which has a broader role in the ecosystem, or a species which is a smaller role in the ecosystem. Either way, the climate, the warming world is basically disturbing the ease of those species. Now, when we say ease of species, means that the species are not contributing what they are supposed to contribute because their own existence, physiological existence, is at stake. So
Yes, of course.
the diversity means sometimes the people are attributing this to Einstein. He says if everybody is thinking the same, that means nobody is thinking. Now if all the species
Supposed to be the change. Yeah.
if all the species were one, for example, then we will not see the diversity. And it's the same like in
Right.
economy. In economy, or the structure, you can also see the structure of a organization. So in the structure of organization, you have people from finance, you have people from HR, you have people from marketing, you have people for housekeeping, and they have their own expertise. Just assume if everyone is doing the same thing, the organization will not work.
Of course.
Exactly same. If the species they are distinct, their distinction is due to the genetic makeup. If all the species are not present and they are not contributing optimally, then what will happen? There will be disturbance, and that
Oh,
disturbance is basically creating problem for other species. So
e-
what the take-home message is the diversity, what we see in the shapes, what we call phenotypes, that there is a dog, there is a cat, there is a bird, there is a monkey, there is a mosquito. They are nothing but a containment of genes, different in some respect. And what we see the difference, that is the phenotype, the manifestations of those genes. And then they are doing diverse functions, like exactly I say, in an entrepreneur or in an office or in a company, diversity is important. And that's why, like we
definitely.
in the universities
Yes.
or organization, we say here diversity and inclusions. Inclusion means every person, every individual will be included with regard to opportunities. There will be no
Yeah.
discrimination. So same here
Definitely. Yeah.
in the
Th-
ecosystems, you need to include. So let me finish this and then I will go to the question.
Sure.
So that
Yeah.
the
Because
reader,
there's another question she just, lined up. So that's why I was just ready to
we will
grab.
go to the
Please
question.
finish it up. Yeah.
So what I want to establish here is that it is basically the change in the temperature, what we call warming world, or a global change, which is coming in the form of the temperature. That disturbance in the temperature is disturbing the physiological well-being of this individual species. And that disturbance in the physiological activity means what we are expecting from a species, the species is not doing that. I'm expecting from a tree that the tree should produce sugars. And if the tree is not producing sugar, there will be no insect will not go to that tree. If the insects are not going to that tree, they will not be pollinated. If they are not pollinated, then there will be an insecurity of the food. We will not get enough food. So things are so linked to each other. They are working in concert. And if individual entity is unable to do its function, that is disturbing the whole web. And consequently, we are losing those functions, and when we are losing those functions, eventually the whole functionality will be disturbed, and that is what you call the death of the universe.
Yeah, definitely. 100% agree with you that every species have got some specific role in this, you can say, the ecosystem or this whole species web, and they are contributing. And if suppose one species would be missed out, so definitely that there would be a sort of chaos in the system, and that would have a bad impact on our environment. Definitely. So now there is a question, being posed. If you can read it, please tell us on Pakistan atmosphere how dangerous for us, how to do precautions. Like maybe she would be considering about again maybe climate change issue, or sort of like we can consider, because she didn't mention here that what is dangerous and
Yeah,
what
I
sort
think
of precautions we should take.
she mentioned atmosphere, and
Yeah.
the thing to which she is basically referring is basically the greenhouse gases. So it's not only the
Yeah,
CO2,
could be.
it's not only the CO2 that is a noxious
Other
gas.
gases as well.
We
Yeah.
have other
Trucks,
gases, for
trucks and
example,
NOx. Yeah.
yeah, like methane, for example. So there's also is a greenhouse gas. Then we have NO. Then we have other different type of gases. And unfortunately, you can see the event of smog
Yeah.
in the
Lahore side.
yeah.
Excellent.
And that is that is not, I mean, a friend of mine, he says that I'm always thinking of going in winter holidays to Pakistan, and when I go to Pakistan, then what I do the whole day, I'm sitting inside the home and I
Of
can't go
course.
outside. Now the question here is why people will not, and look to the situation, like we can't do in our social gatherings due to the climate, right? So how it is impacting our daily life. Now looking to the situation of Pakistan, and so unfortunately, the awareness of the climate, about the climate. And so when we talk of awareness, I mean, it's not such a big thing. And you mentioned, for example, our food, our travel, and our fashion. Quite recently, I finished a fellowship at the at Oxford. I was there for a month and a half, and I'm as a visiting fellow there in Oxford Center for Islamic Studies, and we are taking the aspect of climate change to the faith, how faith can play a role in climate. And so being a scientist, for me, I never thought about that. For example, one of the aspects we are changing the genetic structure of the plants to sequester more carbon dioxide by changing through genetic engineering. And but you can do everything you want. But when you look to the consumer, to the public, if they are not changing their attitude, nothing will work. Even, for example, in the more advanced societies like Germany and France and US and all these countries, where we have legislations, we have penalties, we have taxation for the carbon, but we are not. The problem of the climate is with each passing year, we are accumulating more and more CO2. And the
Yes,
question
of
here
course.
is, whether it's a Pakistan, it's Afghanistan, or it's a other country, and we are basically the victims, or what we call like the collateral damage. We are not producing that much CO2 through our industrial,
Definitely.
through, because we are not industrial countries, but all the aftermaths in form of floods, in form of the seasonal changes, and in form of storms. Excuse me. We are facing those consequences. So partly it is not wholly solely that we are responsible. It's a global phenomenon, and that's why it needs a global involvement of different countries. But specifically in case of, so let's forget about Pakistan. Take an example of individual, and we were saying, if I'm eating my food, and I'm wearing my clothes, and I'm doing my travel either for a recreation or for work, I say, hey, I'm a law-abiding citizen. And why should I bother about the climate? I'm eating my own food. I'm buying it. I'm working, right? And the question is, this is the problem where we are not cognizant. We are not aware of the fact that even these tiny decisions that we are making, it is impacting the climate.
Of course, 100%.
And so the focus, for example, it is basically the human behavior, what we call consumer behavior, that is contributing much more in the decision that is us. Now, for example, a government will not tell me that, for example, I'm here living in the city of Würzburg, and if I want to travel to Frankfurt, 1.5 hour, there are multiple options. For example, I can take my car, and thousands of people will also take their cars. The other is, can I do a carpooling, for example, or I'm using the train. These are the options, and nobody can dictate me for those options. Now, the fellowship in Oxford, what I was like, how faith can play a role when I am taking a food on my platter, when I am wearing a shirt, and when I am making a decision to do a travel. My faith has the potential to to guide me through for options which is more friendly for the humanities. None of the government, not my parents, not my friends, not a police, not a regulation, any other, they can't penalize me if I'm traveling through with my car by driving it one person, and or if I'm driving, if I'm taking a train, for example. Now these are the decisions we need to see. We need to create an empathy for environment, and that the fellowship I did just recently, I finished this fellowship in Oxford. How we can use faith, whether it's a Abrahamic faith, from the religions or it is traditions. And people have been using this. If you look to the indigenous population, I was working with indigenous population in another part of Pakistan, the Gujar communities, and you will be astonished if you compare their carbon footprint. That is almost
Mhm.
equivalent to the footprint of a monkey. Now, if you compare the footprint of indigenous population on the top of mountain with the footprint of somebody in Dubai or with the footprint of somebody in San Francisco, and there will be thousands fold difference. So
Mhm.
because of those choices, the urbanized society's choices that an individual are making, it is basically that is responsible. So there was a last year there was a cosmetic conference show in Munich, and I have a startup on a skincare product, and when we were discussing this, they say it's not the companies that are contributing more. It is basically the consumer behavior that is contributing 70-80% to the mess of the climate. So if we individual become cognizant or cautious about our choices, we can create a big change.
Definitely. Because as a consumer, we really need it. And that's the reason that companies, they are making those products more. And as again, I was also thinking about this sort of concept that how come it should be related to a faith? Because being a sort of like, whether you talk about any religion, and all the religion, they teach about humanity, they teach about empathy, not even for for human beings, but all other living things, all other species as well. So if you become more cognizant about your choices, suppose we are the one, we've been responsible that bringing up junk food at our at our table, on our table at our homes, and we've been responsible bringing up more pollution in the environment. So whether you call it noise pollution, water pollution, other sort of pollution, because we do not know the sort of an attitude we should behave at. Suppose if we are sitting in the garden or in any sort of communal park, and we are the one, we do not know that after eating up we have to throw the trash in the bin where what are being just specified there, and we just littering everywhere. So then this is our behavior, or this is a human behavior who do not ever think about it more seriously or more cognizantly. There's another question the viewer posted here. If you want to respond to this question, so then we would go ahead. If you can read
Yeah,
it.
so this yeah, thanks for asking this important question. I think we want to cover this also. So the Pakistani situation of the biodiversity is also not. I belong to the northern part of Pakistan, and we have fantastic juniper forests on the top of the mountains.
Of course.
Believe me, when I went there, when we were kid, for example, specifically in my own personal life, when we were kid, just by 5 minute walk, we used to the forest, and there used to be fantastic birds and monkeys. Now, if I am walking even 5 hours, I will not find those monkeys.
Extinct.
So
All
what
the
we
animals, yeah, they got
the
extinct.
human mediated phenomena, what we call anthropogenic activities, this whole concept of the anthropocene, that is basically creating problem. And the issue is like you can't the problem is like if this is the property of somebody, you can't
Mhm.
dictate that person here don't cut this tree because you will say it's my property, right? So in this fellowship in the University of Oxford quite recently, we were working on the behavioral design, like can we design behavior, and it's
Can
not
I can I can I raise up one good point here? I think for deforestation or taking care of forest here in South Africa, government has taken the responsibility. Whether that would be your house or you are on rent, whether you want to cut it or not, without taking permission, you cannot touch the natural reserve. So there would be a biggest issue if people they would just take an action from their side. So this responsibility to keep their land green, it is a government responsibility, and they took it in their hands, so nobody can touch it. And it's as if I compare that to my country, my own country, origin country. I mean, this is full lush green. So just wanted to raise this point. Please go ahead.
Yeah, so the policy, the aspect of the policies, and when it comes to implementation, we have very fantastic policies in Pakistan. Even I mean, I did work with the government departments on policies, not directly but indirectly, and sometimes I'm getting grants or some reviews about policies. We have fantastic policies. but the biggest problem is that of implementation. And I mean, I'm currently working on a river that is basically in a valley where I used to be swimming in that river. And if I go now, it is full of the chemicals. It is not a river now.
Okay.
It is a flux of chemicals. And I have started to work on this and writing a grant, Ashoka Foundation, how they can help me by creating awareness among people about their choices. It is simply choices, disposing of the waste instead of instead of dumping it in the soil and creating is a communal responsibility to think about the waste. They say easiest is just to throw it into the river, and the river is
Yeah.
entirely polluted now. What we do, it's
Yeah.
a small study, a pilot study I'm doing. So we will be taking some samples from areas close to the glaciers, where there are no human population, and then taking sample all the way down when the river is pouring into the Indus. And so in this whole area, we want to map the pollution and bacteria diversity and all these things, and just to get an idea to the people, to give data to the people, and then so it's a small project. But I will come back to this motivation and behavioral design. Generally, we are designing products, and we are designing products based upon the value propositions or the needs of the customers. It's a very like no business person will design something which is not the need of the customer. Similarly, the government institutions or the states, um, which can be informally homes, can we design behaviors of the people so that we instill um, value or importance for the climate, and that should come even from our primary education. That should even come from the informal education we are getting from mothers
Mhm.
to raise the kids with sensitivity for the climate.
Mhm.
So it's not a change, or it's not a process that will fix in some years. It will take decades, but we need to start it from now, and we need to involve all segments of the society. It should be the faith-based organization. It should be the social organization, the government organization, educational organizations, and that bigger impact. But individual choices are important, and behavior can be designed.
Mhm.
If we're not designing behavior, then the human is a very rebellious species with all its cognitive power. Human will do everything they want, and so then there will be say, hey, freedom or climate, and we have to make a choice, freedom or existence. If we are not giving, or if for example we are not prioritizing climate over our individual needs for freedom, then we will be losing our existence. So then the question comes, you want to exist, or you want to be a little bit bound, a little bit disciplined with regard to your choices. And it's a very interesting aspect that I have explored in the last couple of years, the humanities side of the climate, which is so much neglected. And there's a lot of work need to be done here to fix the things more voluntarily rather than involving governments. Of course, like the government policy is important, taxation is important, penalties are important, regulations are important. But then if we create empathy right from the mother's lab, in the kindergartens or in the early stage of education, and you are raising people, like for example, like we are raising people with kids with morals, regulations,
Mhm.
these are important. And if they are doing something wrong, we scold them, and sometimes even you can slap the kid if they are doing something drastically insulting. But if the
Yeah.
same value is instilled right from the beginning, so you need to involve the olds and the youths and the youngs and the old and everyone, and that way we can handle the question. It's not only one country, rather, then it should be a global effort. So it's like an ecosystem effect. Yeah.
Okay, as we did discuss about biodiversity and the importance of biodiversity, and to Pakistani context, we can also discuss, like, which way biodiversity in Pakistan has been disrupted, disoriented, and what could be the causes, main causes, as, like, in detail, if you can just bring up. Of course, pollution is the biggest issue. Human behavior or human choices are the biggest issue. But overall, when you would just bring up industrial revolution was the biggest issue. Which way would you like to enhance more points in about that our biodiversity is in danger because of these causes? Mike is yours. I'm just getting off from the stage for a second because my charger is just, a little bit, got away from, like, it's not charging
Okay.
properly, got disrupted. So I will be back in a minute, right?
Take your time.
Please go ahead. Yeah.
Yeah. So, as you said, like, which are those factors, for example, which is basically contributing to the exhaustion of biodiversity in Pakistan? And so, if you look, for example, we have multiple issues. Of course, there is the issue of discipline and regulation, implementation of the policies. But the biggest driver, what we call, is the population. So we have outgrowing population, and that population needs so more space, more homes, more cars, more hospitals. So you are expanding your cities, and on the top of that, you are not making a policy to build new cities. We have biggest area with the largest area, but we are not making new cities. Rather, we are expanding the old cities and expanding and expanding and expanding, and that is basically also the extraordinary burden on the old cities. So we are expanding because our needs are expanding, and at the same time, then the issues of the governance, that we are not providing. So, for example, if a city is capable to fulfill the need of 1 million people, they are already with 2, 3, 4, 5 millions. So there it's basically the problem of the regulation in the population, for example. You need more infrastructure, you need more housings, you need all these things, and then the way we are doing it, we are not planning it. We are obstructing the ways of the waterways, the natural flow of the water, and when there's a small floods, then that is creating problems. And this indiscriminate increase in the population is basically increasing our needs. And then we have multiple more reasons. We have what we call the instability, the political instability, that is not letting the governments to implement their policies.
Yeah.
Then we have governance issues. Then we have ethnic issues. We have problems. We are diverting more our resources to security than to the welfare of the people. And it's a very interesting concept in nature. I mean, what we do in a simple experiments. So plants, I'm working also on the plants, and plants have defense system and plants have developmental system. If you if you divert all the energy to the defense, the development will be hampered. And same is true for the populations, for the people. If you have problems that are more, if you are channelizing more your resources towards the security questions, whether it's insurgencies, it's terrorism, or it's outside political situation, if more of the resources are diverted to that, then the people will be at stake, and that is creating more disparity. So what the people are doing, like what is exhausting biodiversity, then people will be using all the unfair means to extract resources from the environment. And it's a very simple concept. Sometimes I'm giving this example in the circular economy. So we, the humans, whether we are Pakistanis or Indians or whatever, we, the humans, are basically so much addicted to the use of the products.
Yeah.
What is the product? My food is a
Got it.
product. My book is a product. My whatever I see here, I am living in a flood of the products. And products are basically made of parts, and parts are basically made of molecules, and molecules are coming from the ecosystems, the same ecosystem where species are living. Now, if we are extracting all those resources in the form of metals, in the form of let's say wood, in the form of cellulose, to fill the need of the industry, and we have more people, so we are putting more burden on our natural resources. It can be a forest, it can be a sea, it can be agricultural land. Now, when we are extracting more resources, we are creating problems for the species there. We are disturbing their ecosystems. Just take an example of a tree. I mean, I'm sometimes telling students how important is a tree. Just give me from ecological point of view. A tree is interacting with birds, with reptiles, with ants, with snakes, with monkeys. And if you cut down one tree, you are disturbing the life of the whole species.
Of course.
Now, this indiscriminate use of the resources, we are extracting and extracting and extracting, that is basically putting our ecosystems at stake. Now, ecosystem is nothing but a harmonious availability of resources for all other species. Now, if we are disturbing those ecosystems, we are disturbing the life of the species, where they will go. As I said, like
Right.
5 minute walk, I used to see monkeys. Now, with a 5 hour walk, I can't see them. Where they will go? So we are pushing them against the wall up to an extent. First, they become endangered, then they become eventually they become extinct. So it's more like a different stage of extinctions. We are disturbing their they become more rare, and then they eventually they will be extinct. So the question here is, specifically in a Pakistani agroclimatic situation, it is the indiscriminate use of resource, cutting off the forest, using of the ocean resources indiscriminately, and on the top of that, we do not have regulations. All the industrial effluents are eventually going. We do not have the what we call like the desalination, like when the municipality is basically treated the wastewater treatment system, and eventually every pollutant is going into our water tables. From that, our oceans are disturbed. From that, our rivers are disturbed, and from that, so the entire ecosystem. Now, the question here is, for example, people have seen 500 human used pharmaceuticals in the oceans. Now, a whale or a turtle, they do not use any ibuprofen for a headache. It is basically we are using, and eventually it is going into the. Now, what we'll say, these are chemicals, and chemicals have, they are giving triggers. They're triggering the cells, and then the organism has to respond. So all these unnecessary activities they will be doing, and eventually they are extinct. Now we have more.
Pharma industry is growing because of us.
Exactly. Now look, for example, to the use of pharmaceuticals, the chemicals, the pesticides. We have
Yeah.
no regulations. If there are regulations, those regulations are easily broken down by giving few thousand of rupees to an inspector, and he will say, "Okay, don't worry, throw it in the Indus, or just throw it in the roadside." Even if people are doing this sacrifices in the Eid, for example, and throwing all these garbages into the roadsides, then the plastic is another headache for all
I'm
humanity.
going to talk about it. I'm going to talk about it.
And so, cut this long story short, in our case, we have multiple problems. As I said, the population, the regulations, the focus of the government. If the focus is more on existential needs, then how come we will focus on the welfare? So, if there is a depression on the welfare, you will have better security, but you are losing here. And I don't mean that we should not have better security. It's very important to have a balance between security and welfare. But the question is, whenever this balance is shift more toward the security, then the welfare will be at stake. And we are living in a situation where welfare is at stake, and people are snatching resources. Literally, I mean, like when you see the snatching of the foods. Why people will be snatching food if they have adequate food on their plate? But the question is, and these are our choices, do we need that much population? Or if we have high population, we still have resources. Can we channelize resources? Can we focus? So there is a lack of focus, the governance issues, then the public, and then the lack of regulations, and all these things in a very combined way, it is leading to a situation where our species are struggling for its existence. Initially, they are endangered, then they become endemic, and ultimately they become extinct. It's not a process that will not just happen in all of a sudden or in a couple of days, but this is a process that needs to monitor, and then it needs a lot of resolve from the government side to for example, conserve the species or to restore the species, not only the species, the ecosystems. And then this restoration and conservation, this is a big effort that need a lot of public sector people, public, and also the government. So it's all very integrated process. But In my understanding, it is just um, the basic understanding about our decisions, whether it is for our individual decision, food, feed, and travel, or this is our decision to look to our population, or this is our decision to vote for whom. All these small
Hmm.
decisions basically coming in a very big context, and then the collateral damage is the we are losing species because we are not giving them optimal environment, and we are over exhausting our natural resources, forests, oceans, soil, and then for the sake of urbanizations, people are growing. I mean, what we call this urban forestry. In the European cities, there was let the cities become more greener. We say, hey, let the cities become more concrete. And those
Hmm.
decisions, the powerful pockets of uh, the cities, they are not implementing those decisions. And I'm in the city where I'm living. Just 3 months back, we got a letter from the city government that we want to convert. There's a two. Can you? So there's a voting from public. Should we convert this park into a public park for our kids to play in the city, or should we make it a
Hmm.
park?
Should
And
we make it a
car parking lot,
car
car
park?
parking area.
Oh,
So the government has decided
okay.
that there will be no car coming into the city, and they converted. More people voted that let's make it into the public park or the kids
Oh.
park inside the city.
Hmm.
If this is our situation in our country, they will say, hey, convert the public
Car
park
park.
into a car park. Nobody yet. So these are the sensitivities,
Okay. Yeah.
and it's not like a simple I say like a magic bullet or simple solution. It is very much into the policies. It is very much into the attitudes, and ultimately awareness. Pro-climate awareness is very important for a feeding mothers, for a kid, for a professor. Even we, the professor, the academia, are more ignorant as compared to other people, right?
Yeah.
Because we are responsible to educate people, but we are not doing that type of education. And the question here is, it's an integrated process. We are losing a lot of our species in the oceans, on the mountains, in the plains, in the desert, for example, because we they are not the focus, and we are losing a lot.
Definitely, I would agree with you. I think there I have to mention here a few examples. Um, Here in this country, what do they do? They raise some sort of, campaign, awareness campaign. There was a time that there was too much talk on rhinos saving, that save rhinos. And for that purpose, because I think rhinos were going extinct due to XYZ reasons, that either hunters, they just, gonna, hunt it, kill it, and just sell it for XYZ purposes, XYZ reasons. And then what happened? That rain awareness campaign did go for a longer period of time, for years and years, and a lot more people, even though the nation was contributing it from their side for raising awareness that how could we save rhinos because they are extincting and they are finishing. So for that, they raised this campaign. There was another thing which I also want to bring up, because policies are important. As you just said it, that maybe city government, gave you or brought a letter or sent a letter to different houses, or maybe the community, that whether take a decision, rather what would be your choice, that should it be car park or should it be children park or a public park. Same way, I think policies are very much important, because whoever designed the policies, or whoever is the authority of a nation, of a country, they take the decision. If the decisions are not being taken wisely, so of course the disruption can come from that side. I teach. My background is I'm a teacher. In Pakistan, I did teach. Here, I also do online teaching, apart from this YouTube session as well, or talk show as well. So then when there was a time that I had to take care of my children's homework as well, so I used to help them when they were young. And there was a very good book which was about life skills. And for life skills, for a human behavior, they were teaching their children. There were sort of, topics, or you can say subjects, where they were mentioning that which way you would bring change in your society and the community, which way you have to do a good use of water, you have to do a good use of not making pollution or not generating more, disruption. So there were like many little things that, okay, if there is sort of like you're going for taking a bath, so do not open the shower for children. For children, they were just mentioning, do not open the shower for a longer period of time, or when you brush, you close the tap, or when there would be dishwashing, see, keep the dishes aside and do the whole dishwashing one time. This way, then you can save water. So there were some sort of instructions and guidelines for saving water, instructions and guidelines for not littering, instruction and guidelines not to be responsible for pollution. So there were many ways where I saw it. It's been missed out in my country, whether you call it, because see, the change is good. If because if water is still, it would become stagnant. So I would say it was a good sort of change from in my life as well, because living in my country, I didn't come across for those sort of understanding or skills which was missed for me. And maybe if there was no change, or I didn't go to another country, I couldn't learn those things. Now, I mean, there's much more awareness which is also missing in our country. And if sort of campaigns would run in our country, maybe through knowledge and awareness, our people, our nation would also learn. So this was the thing which I still feel like that people, they do not know. One good space, those Twitter space, I was listening to one session, one talk show, and it was like talking about healthier Pakistan. They were talking about healthy choices, good choices of food, but they didn't really do not know the core of the chemicals, because chemicals are deadly, chemicals are dangerous, chemicals, what a sort of in the form of products they bring their houses, they do not even have knowledge of that. People, they do not even bother to read the ingredients or the instructions on the products, or like backside the labels, okay, what is being, which chemical has been mentioned, which chemical has been used in this, and they use it without any further knowledge. There was a time, even though I could also say that with a little bit of knowledge, I was just learning, because every day is a learning day. So it aluminium foil, which is also very dangerous, I used to bring it. I stopped bringing it up because I know the health risk of using it, so I stopped bringing it. A lot more people, they bring the cling wrap, which is a plastic, but plastic in detail I have to talk. So these are many minor things, maybe of raising awareness campaigns or some other kind of social sort of meeting. I think change could come, but our nation still, I mean, there is a big gap, I'd say, that need to fill up for our nation to look in a cognitive way, or to look wisely. So that was a thing which I missed, and when I come to this country. Anyways, there is, as you know, that the second part of the session, we have to discuss about, because what is a problem, it is all because of, I think, more and more of technology usage, or more and more advancement, nowadays. Yeah, it gives benefit, a lot more benefits of using technology in xyz reasons or million of reasons, but of course I also do believe that everything have got pros and cons. So when we talk about biotechnology, I would want you to give a sort of little bit detail about biotechnology, the use of biotechnology, and some examples of traditional biotechnology as well. Then we would go towards more deeper in the sort of biotechnology, you can say, genetic engineering, and some sort of there were a few things which just like getting rid of my mind, but I am going to bring up. So yeah, first of all, biotechnology, how do you see it, and the usage of it, some example if you're just going to bring up, so then yeah, we can go further.
Yeah, so I mean, the biotech and biodiversity, apparently they are looking two different topics, but they're not altogether,
Interconnected, yeah.
they are not altogether independent. They are quite dependent to each other. And so, what is basically a biotechnology? The biotechnology means that how we can use biological entities, starting from micro plants, animal, birds, whatever the entity is, how we can use an unconventional manner to get advantage of them. So the question here is, what are those tools that we can use? And we, in the beginning, we mentioned that a species is nothing but a containment of unique genes. So the unique genes are basically making that species unique, and that uniqueness is in the function. Then they do unique functions. I mean, we do not have those enzymes which is fixing or mixing water with carbon dioxide and making glucose. That is only plant can do. Or, for example, we do not have those enzymes which is digesting cellulose in our gut. Bacteria have those enzymes, and we are harboring bacteria over evolutionary time point to do those tasks for us. So the uniqueness of the gene is basically giving unique function. And if a function is missing in one species, can we borrow or incorporate that function from another species? Now, I will give you an example. For example, it's a very famous example. So, species are breeding in nature. Means if you mate, it is not possible for a dog to mate with a cat and bring another type of offspring. A cat will mate with a cat species to make a cat. A dog will mate with a dog species to make a dog. Now, that is what we call gene pool, that the matings are restricted in certain pools, and every pool is a species, right? Now, with the biotechnology, and specifically with the genetic engineering, what we do, this distinction should be gone, and we can take genes from bacteria. So gene is a DNA, but nothing is a DNA, but the gene has a function, has activity. So, activity that bacteria can do, can I incorporate that bacteria in my genome? Can I take a gene from bacteria, put it in my genome, hypothetically speaking, to not to bother that bacteria, and that function will be automatically done by my stomach by myself? Or, for example, let's take another example. Insulin, for example. Insulin is a human product or a alien product. Insulin are produced in the liver, for example, and then people, those who are suffering from diabetes, eventually we need insulin. Now, back in years, people used to slaughter pigs to take insulin from the pigs, and humans are using, or other animals. Now, if you see, for example, almost 15 to 20% of the world population, more than that, and specifically in our countries where the healthcare is so bad and the food choices are so worse. If, for example, we were not able to use biotechnological methods for production of the insulin, we were supposed to slaughter those animals just for the sake of insulin, because we need insulin. Insulin is produced in the pancreas and the liver in the liver of the animals, and to take insulin, external insulin for the human use, you have to slaughter the animals. Now, how many animals you will slaughter to take insulin? Now, what scientists is, instead of slaughtering animals, they identify the gene which is making insulin, and you cut that gene from the human genome or from the animal genome, and you clone that in a bacteria, and now the bacteria is producing us insulin. Now, how many, for example, if this is, let's say, a 20 square meter flat room, and I can make a incubatory here and can produce insulin for thousands of people. But if for that, if I'm putting, let's say, animals here, I can hardly take 4, 5, 6 animals in 20 square meter area. Now, with the biotechnological application, just understanding the code of the insulin, you crack that, you identify that, you take it, and then you put it inside the bacteria. Now, I was telling you in the beginning, in the biotechnology, or what we call genetic engineering, there is no concept of the gene pool. You can take a gene from the humans, clone it in the plants, and a plant will make the insulin that will come in our blood, for example, in our bread. So the biotechnology basically revolutionized human life, specifically starting from the vaccine production, pharmaceuticals, and then you can name it. And now, not only that, if we are in a position to sequence the genes, to identify the structure of the gene, to identify the function of the gene, to characterize this, it's a long process. And then you take that code, synthesize that gene synthetically, and you take that into the bacteria, then you will take those products. I was giving you the example for insulin. So, for example, cytokines, if it's like a therapy for a viral infection. Now, from where we will take cytokines if that is not produced in the human body? So you take the gene, you clone this in a bacteria. So bacteria is a tiny factory, and you can take. So, for example, like a bacterial genome is round like this. So there are enzymes cut here, and place the gene here, and you have a construct. And then the bacteria is producing those things like they are producing many more for themselves. So this is the idea of the biotech, which is now more in the genetic engineering and the genome editing. So the technologies where we, the humans, are directly interfering, correcting the genes, or mapping the genes, or tweaking the genes. But of course, the ethical considerations are there. I don't want to let plant grow on my head. It should grow in the soil. There will be ethical consideration. But if, for example, a plant which can produce anything if the gene is there. And if I take the vaccine gene, the insulin gene from my genome and clone this in a plant, the plant will be producing something quite valuable for humans. So that is basically the concept of biotechnology, where we are taking genes, specifically in genetic engineering, we are taking genes from species out of the gene pool, and then for the sake of benefits, for the purpose of benefits, we are cloning them, we are purifying them, those proteins, those products, and then we are using them. So this is one. Same as, for example, if we have genes which is causing sickle cell anemia or causing hemophilia, the genetic diseases, there is problem in the gene. The problem in the gene, there is a mutation in the gene. And
Hmm.
if you do that mutation, if you can play around with those mutations, you can secure a human. For
Hmm.
example, the blindness. There is gene, for example, for the eye, for the eyesight, and that is mutated. If you repair that mutation, the people will begin to see. So the aspect of biotech is to address the human elements, the cancers, the genetic diseases, even for example, aging. I mean, sometimes people, I mean, Yuval Harari, he wrote, it will be possible for the people to repair their pathways which are leading to deaths, and then people will not die. They will live for 300-400 years, which is possible. But the question is the ethical side. The ethical side would be a person with 400 years, when he turns to 100 year, he is hardly get adult, and he will be living in the same society when other people will be almost like aged at 80 years, and this disparity will create a different type of. So it does not mean that the people should use biotech for unethical reasons, but then we have challenges, we have diseases, we have infections, and then we have limitations of the supply of the important compounds, and we are living in a world of in a changing world. Climate is changing everything. The pharmaceuticals, the insects, the bugs are making resistance. Those bugs which are in our body causing infection, they are creating resistance. So we need to rely more and more on the biotech and more sophisticated methods. And being a scientist, I will say, more sophisticated methods. We it is our field, it is open for us, but then it must be under regulation and human and ethical consideration.
Thank you so much. I have posted one question, also another question from my viewer. But before that, you mentioned all the good benefits of, like, you can say, of kind of uh, those engineering and sort of, like, editing for genes, and we can do some good sort of, stuff through gene editing, or those sort of biodiversity or bioengineering way, that not biodiversity, bioengineering way or biotechnology way, we can bring up change. Because if there is sort of a problem, or being a kind of gene being mutated, like you said, like by editing, we can just bring up change. That's completely okay. There was one news which I was just thinking about it. It was like, it is an rather you see it an ethical sort of risk, or like, which way do you see it? I would like to listen your response as well on this. Like, I think recently in April 2025, the first like the world's first baby born from an AI, assisted, and sort of, you can say, in vitro fertilization, IVF process, and that baby being born. And there was a time, I don't know, maybe a year ago or something, people were talking about designer babies, where, I don't know, ethical consideration would take place in that scenario or not. And people were talking about it, like, whichever way you want your baby to be designed up, that will be done. Like, and this case which has been happened recently, about a firstborn, through AI. How do you see it? And what would be the impact of it, like, later, um, in the society, or aftermaths of it? Like, people, they are just, or you can say babies, being born through AI. How do you see it?
Yeah, this AI is becoming such a buzzword, and we, university. I was part of a decision committee where we were supposed to create different institutes. And so they say Institute of AI for Psychology, AI for Climate, and then AI for cities, and AI for this, and AI for that. And then one guy said, "Guys, just wait. I mean, after 10 years, this word AI will be disappear, and there will be another word.
Is
So
it?
what forgiveness? So let's call it something little more durable, so that we do not need to change all these labels to demarcate these different institutes in the university." Well, this was quite a coincidence. And if you see, for example, this book written by Noel Hariri, The Nexus.
Okay.
Nexus. So Noel Hariri is a phenomenal. He's a professor of natural history, and he wrote the first book called *Sapiens*. It's about humans, how humans they manage to come out of the chaos, and they inhabit the world and become a civilized species with social responsibilities and all these things. And then another book he wrote is called Homo Deus. Homo Deus mean how humans become a tiny god with all the biotechnology and all these industrial revolutions and all these things changing the world. And now he wrote Nexus. It's a lovely book, and I'm in the middle of that. I really enjoy reading this. It's about how human generated algorithm. AI is nothing but a statistics and computer science and statistics. Nothing more than that. Statistics and computer science. And how AI, which is the human generated algorithms, they will generate the human. So human with the cognitive revolution came out of the chaos, living with other species like Homo erectus, Homo heidelberger, Homo neanderthal, and we got a cognitive revolution. How it happened, nobody knows. So from that we come to the earth, and we become the master of the earth. The book he wrote, Homo Deus, how human is a tiny god in its own fiscal autonomy, and also to decide about the animal's life of some other people. Like if it's a governance, you can decide about the life of people by triggering a bomb or by something. That recently we have seen this phenomena. If all these arms are in the hands of irresponsible people, we can see the consequences. So the human become a tiny god.
And
With
Oppenheimer said it like, I have become the death,
yeah,
and then the sort of destruction started through nuclear bomb. So he was responsible. He said it himself. I have become the death now for
so the
people, for
question
this
here
nature.
is like how human become the amount of autonomy human got, and then human created algorithms, statistics and statistics and computer science. So the human generated algorithms are now governing humans, and that is coming how to create the AI generated baby. Now, in a simple term, I mean, for a common people, AI generate a human baby. It's not like that. It's what we call synthetic biology. We can, so once you identify the genes through the nature of the genes, so the gene is nothing but a stretch of the DNA, and DNA is nothing but a few, some sort of acids, what you call adenine, guanine, cytosine, and thymine. So, for example, if I have a book written in English, there are 26 alphabets in English, and the combination of different words is making one book. And there is millions and trillions and gazillions of volumes of books written in English language, just in 26 words. So we have four words, and which is making the entire what we call, just we discussed the species and the biodiversity. Now, if you understand the genetic code, the structure of the gene, and you say it is A, T, G, C, adenine, thymine, guanine, cytosines. Once you crack that code, you can synthesize those codes, put it in the cell. The cell will make from the genes protein, and proteins are making functions. Now, what is me? I am a body made of genes. Genes are making proteins, and proteins are doing the functions. Now, through AI, what we call, I will still say it's computer science, a little orthodox in telling it. Through computation, you see how many genes I need, and which gene will interact with gene, what should be the structure of the gene. So it is basically synthetic biology, which can lead to such type of things where you can manipulate the genes, you can create genes, you can remove genes. And 70s we discovered restriction enzymes, which are molecular scissors. They can cut DNA at the right site, that can cut DNA at a precise site. You can remove the genes, you can add the gene through what we call the gene therapy, which is the outbirth of the biotechnology. And now, if you say, I want to design a human, we say, I want to design a behavior, right? And it's not very, I mean, yesterday I was in Berlin, and then on a wall, it was written, thoughts make things. When human, they imagine something, it will become a thing at some point. Maybe now, maybe 50 years later, but whatsoever is imagined by humans, eventually it will become a thing. And so if you
So
say,
first the idea comes, and then
the things will be there.
things would go. Yeah.
Yeah. And it is just a matter of time that you are converting those thoughts into things, right? Now, but the question is like from where the thoughts are coming. If we have freedom, then human can think so many things. It's a completely different discussion. The freedom should, for absolute freedom should be given or not, or should there be, is there absolute what you call free will? It's a very philosophical discussion people are doing in the spaces. And the question here is, what comes into mind? And you say, hey, I need those genes. So there are genes in bacteria, and then there are genes in insects, and then there are genes in chimps, and there are some genes which are good in humans. You combine them, you put it in the bacteria, you can create a simple organisms, theoretically speaking, hypothetically speaking, and AI is basically giving you all the tools and tricks and combinations. So, for example, being a human, my capacity is limited, but the AI, hey, you need this property, you can take from monkey. You need this property, you can from donkey. You can this property, you combine them, and you put it in the thing, and then there is automations. You combine all these things, and you can create a distinct species. But instead of creating distinct species with unintended consequences, the interesting things in the biotechnology and the biodiversity, why we not restore those species which are already gone? Why those species, the extinct species, can we take this DNA and we can regenerate them? And that is in the recent days, now more and more, and from the archaeological sites, you take the DNA, you bring them, you nurture them.
Will that be possible?
It is already in practice, yes. And
Oh,
that
wow.
is the evolution of biotechnology, how you can use for biotechnology. So we are all being a conservation biologist, we are always thinking about, hey, if the species is extinct, what we do, and we feel sorrow is it's like a death of somebody in the family. And why not? It's important. We say like the biodiversity should be intact. But now with the biotechnology, you can restore those species. And which is the biotechnology and genetic engineering, or now what we call synthetic biology, is giving this opportunity. It's a quite nascent phenomena, quite recently growing phenomena, but someone thought maybe 50 years before, crack the genetic code, and now you can restore those things. Now instead of making a new species, hocus pocus from where with no weird and alien, why not you are restoring those who are part of this universe and they were important for us and we are suffering due to them? So that's like what we call.
What about if I'm just thinking of a dinosaur? Then-
Exactly. That is exactly possible, because if you have the code, and more, 2 years before, the ancient DNA guy who developed protocols for ancient DNA, sequencing of the ancient DNA from from caves and from rocks and from archaeological sites, the biotechnological, specifically with gene, and then the AI is just helping us. AI tell, hey, you can potentially, so AI is nothing but is giving you a more decision power based on data. So you train the model, and the model say you will be doing less errors, and it will be error proven if you use this combination as compared to the combination you want to test it. So it's a little a boom of the AI. It's just like computer science and statistics. But coming back to this topic of biodiversity and biotechnologies, initially we were taking these two independent topics. But now I say, like, biotechnology is restoring important molecules for the human use, or biotechnology in the form of synthetic biology can
so it's
create.
also helping biodiversity.
We can also restore those species which are basically dumped. You take their genetic code, you bring them, you nourish them through synthetic biology, and those species can. There's some good news for the conservation biology people. Now, personally, for example, in our context, plants, for example,
Mhm.
they have a cycle where they are fixing carbon dioxide and water into glucose
Mhm.
and through the photosynthesis. Now, a normal plant, can take 5 molecules per second, but that is not enough, because humans, we say we have created a big mess. There's a big disparity. We discussed in the very beginning that we have more load of carbon dioxide. Now, if you say plant, why you are not taking more carbon dioxide? Plant say, hey, it's not a problem. It's not a problem for me. Why would I do that? Because nature is conservative. Nature will not do any hocus pocus thing which is not required. Now, what the human ingenuity, and I say the thoughts are making things. What we did, for example, through AI, we take genes, the Calvin cycle. So there are enzymes in the Calvin cycle in plants which are not so efficient. We took enzymes from different species in the marines and soil bacteria, from the human bacteria, from different species, different carboxylases. We combine them and we create an artificial cycle, which is now fixing 80 molecule per second. Now, instead of plant with endogenous capacity of 5 molecule of carbon dioxide, now plants are taking the one we designed, are taking 80 molecule per second. And that way we are addressing the issue of climate by absorbing more and more carbon dioxide by using synthetic biology, which is nothing but biotechnology. So that way you
Right.
are the burden of carbon dioxide and addressing the issue of the CO2 with a synthetic biology or biotechnological tools. So whether they are fixing of the carbon dioxide, management of the carbon dioxide, or it is the restoration of the species, biotechnology now is playing an important role, keeping
Yeah.
in view ethical considerations.
Right. Would you like to respond first the question which I have just showed that on the screen, and then just regarding biotechnology, I want to bring up something, please.
It's more about the availability of the mineral and nutrients in the food and air, and we are losing immunity. And yeah, so it's not only about the availability. It's not that only the rich people who has access to the good food they will live healthy, and those who are poor they will not. Of course, I mean there are some disparity, like but it is the food choices that we are taking, the combination of the food, or the nature of the food. The more it is natural, for example, if it's least processed, or it is more complex with regard to sugars, or if it is less cooked, for example, then we have more benefits, and then people will be living with better immunity. But if you take, for example, all the processed food, deeply fried, eat that, and they will cause inflammation. Inflammation is nothing but disruption of the cellular functions. So if the cellular function is disrupted, we will not live long. We will be living up to 45 or 50 years, and that's how the life expectancy in our country, because of the food. Food is very important thing, and it is so unregulated or least regulated in our country. Same is true about the air, for example. I will be so cautious about my water. I will be so cautious about the food I'm taking. I will be looking for the calories and for the ingredients and bad carb or good carb or complex or multigrain. But I never thought about the air that is going into my lungs, and that is going into the lung of a king, and going into the lungs of a peon in the king's office. The air that we are polluting, that has costs, and we are indiscriminately polluting our air. So our problems are multifactorial, and So whether it's a food, whether that is water, we pay much more attention to food and water, but we are paying less. We don't bother about the air that we are engulfing. It's much more like thousands of liters of air we are gushing into our lungs. And if that is polluted, that is intoxicated, all the toxicants are going down. And that's where we are losing on the front of the health. We are getting more morbidity, we are getting more diseases, we are getting more inflammations in a very early age. If you compare the life of a person living in Switzerland with good air outside, and then you compare that with somebody inside the Karachi or Lahore, people they will be morbid. Um, what the longevity is longevity now we are deciding. For example, live long. It's not about living for 200 years. It's about living for 80 years, but without diseases. And if my choices in early part of my life and my daily routines, if they are more healthy, then in 80s I would let a person to stand up on my chair. But if those choices are so poor, then I will need a person to take me up because I lost my muscles. I lost my internal system because of the bad air, because bad food choices and all these things. So it's all about awareness, and then taking those tough decisions. When I say tough decision, if you have on your table all these biryanis and pulao and all these things, there is a big jihad to not touch that. Rather go for something more salad.
Okay, I also want to bring up something here because, like, maybe the question I didn't read the question, I didn't want to, like, go in more detail, but, like, by understanding this thing, when you just respond to that, like, if you just compare, like, the elite class or the, like, middle class, and suppose the technology or so sort of, advancement facility, it being facilitated with the elite class, maybe you can so say that, like, juice maker, and they think in the lead class, they think, okay, now we would be just making the juice, the pure fruit juice, and then we are good to go, we are having a healthy meal or a healthy diet. Is because they do not realize or think of it, like, what is happening. They're just consuming sugar, like in a form of fructose, and the good part, it, like, the thick part is they just thrashing it out, throwing it, wasting. On the other hand, like the middle class who cannot afford to buy a juice maker, but they just taking the whole fruit itself, so of course they are having that juice taste as well, and of course, like, that thick part of it. So meaning they are, whether or not automatically, instantly, they are on the healthier side as compared to the elite class. So that was
Yeah.
the thing also coming in my mind, that whether healthy food choices, it's up to you. And the elite class, I think they need more awareness, because they think, like, we are we more just compatible with the technology and the sort of more advancement, but somewhere somehow they are going away from the nature, and there is a sort of a problem, coming up. So that was the thing which was also coming in my mind. But then let's go towards the a little bit, because agriculture is also important, and when we talk about biotechnology, there is a big involvement of biotechnology in agriculture side as well. And I don't know, I mean, like, whether you call about from Pakistan's, in the Pakistani context, a sort of a type or system of agriculture going on. But overall, if I just say about, as you said it, like, you gave the example of a plant that it would be producing more fruit or something because of the synthesis biology, like GMO, genetically modified organism. Suppose, would you see more benefits of the GMO or risk of using GMO? Because we are also, I think, disturbing the nature that way, and the impact of disturbing the nature by using, like, the technology of GMO, is fine enough, or again, ethical risk is there, but I don't think so. People, they keep the ethics in their mind when they come up to something, because there are many reasons, many other issues which I also saw, but some things are, like, not just are triggering here for now. But GMOs, risk, benefits, especially in agriculture side, how do you see it? Is it bringing up sort of, a sort of, can say, benefit or good growth for agriculture? Because whatever been sort of in farming side, whatever they're growing, as again the whole process economy, I'm not bringing up here, it would reach, to our, doorstep, and we would be consuming it. So suppose if the vegetables and fruits would be more modified through this GMO cause, do you think that we are consuming pure thing, pure nature, natural things, natural products? How do you see it, this whole scenario?
It's a very interesting question, and there is a lot of pseudoscience associated with the concept of GM. And being a plant biologist or plant biotechnologist, or being a person from the biotechnology, it would be a shame that I say that we should not promote GM. We should promote GM because it's a solution. Now, the problem here is there is the scientific method is so scientists say everything is wrong until it is proven right. Okay, faith say everything is okay until it is pure, until it is not okay. So the way society, philosophy, and theology is approaching problems, and the way science is approaching problems is completely different. And same is the scientists are approaching problems. They have more what we call the mechanistic view, and very least on the societal view. But of course, like, the scientists should jump into the society and see what I'm creating is really making sense. And I'm taking an example of the golden rice. So the professor who made the golden rice, which is a rice with added benefits of vitamins, right? And so the rice, the plant of the rice contains many different types of vitamins, but when it becomes to the rice grain, it is missing that particular vitamin. And so taking that pathway from a bacteria and incorporating into the seeds, the genes into the rice, taking from those fungi or bacteria, it is creating the golden rice, which is having all the different type of vitamins. Now, it took, let's say, 10 years for the professors to create a variety, a breed of the rice, which is equal amount with added amount of vitamin D. And now it took him almost 30 years to let it grow, and people are not allowing him. And this, in my understanding, being a scientist, and I'm sorry to say, it is ignorance. If you have evidence that, yeah, this rice is creating problem, it's causing allergy, it's causing infection or something, that's okay. Let's throw it away. But there is no such type of things happen. I don't say that you should incorporate toxins into the food commodity and let the people eat it. That can be a bioterrorism. If it is for a good purpose, then we shouldn't. Now, for example, plants are changing their genes. Plants are changing their entire genome. That's called polyploidy. We are getting more and more set of the genes. Nature is doing that. In the conventional breeding, we are taking one variety, another variety, breeding it, and taking 10 years, 15 years. But in the genetic engineering, you can say, okay, this. So, for example, if you have wild wheat, okay, a wild maize or wild rice. Now, due to the climate, our plants are getting diseases. Due to the climate, our plants are becoming less efficient in production because the temperature is changing. Now, if I say I should not eat, now the problem here, we are making a lot of population in the third world country. And then if you have means to make your plant more resilient through the transfer of gene from one species to another species, or within the species, or to modify the internal genetic machinery of the plant to make plant more resistant to the attack of the bugs, or make plant growing more under high temperature, not only high temperature, under a high under sheltering condition, like if it is storms, for example, or if it is hails, or if it is waterlogged area. These are challenges where plant will not do good job. Now we have challenges, and then we say, hey, I have challenges. I have so I have pestle in my home, and a thief should come and take everything, or even kill me, and I should not use the pestle. This is this type of psyche. So the question here is, of course we need to use it, and of course we need to allow it. And being a scientist, I will advocate that, because otherwise this will be a big honesty to my own profession of 20 years working with the genes, and then say, oh, this people should not use it. And I think It's a very pseudoscience behind it to not consider genetically modified crops. I'm specifically talking about the crops. And these are not for hocus pocus reason. These are for, as I said, if a bug is attacking my crops, it's a big loss for the farmer. The
Yeah.
seed, the fertilizers, the efforts, and at the end, a bug came and destroyed the whole field of the cotton or of the apples or maybe the wheat or rice by the bugs, by the, let's say, the locust, or by the grasshoppers. Now, if I'm using a gene which can deter grasshopper, which can basically not allowing, if the grasshopper is taking something from the plant and the grasshopper is dying because grasshoppers have those receptors, it's not necessary that I will also be dying because I do not have those receptors. It's selectivity. So the question here is, we have enormous challenges to the climate in terms of infestations, in terms of infections, in terms of attacks of the bugs, with which farmers are losing their profit. There will be famine, there will be, and people have seen what is this Irish famine. In the Ireland, the staple food is potato. And
Mm-hmm.
potato, and that year, potato was infected by the bacteria, what we call lead blight. And millions of people died due to starvation. Now, if there was a genetic engineer, he could have generated a potato which is not being infected by the bacteria. Now, what we do here, if you say there is a resistance gene to the bugs, you take it from another species, from an insect, from a bacteria, put it into the plant, and the plant are now more resistant. They do not need more pesticides, nor chemical pesticides. There's no harm in that. And they should be allowed. Otherwise, we will be facing starvation. There will be a time, let's say after 50 or 200 years, when the temperature is reaching, the normal temperature will reach 40 degrees Celsius, where plant would not be able to produce anything at 40 degrees Celsius. Should I just put my hand here and here and I say, okay, I should not do anything because I'm human, because there are ethical considerations? Of course, there are ethical considerations. But if those ethical considerations are at the cost of my life, existence or freedom, and existence come first. And there is no study, all the genetically modified crops, whatsoever we have seen, the BT crops, the BT cotton, BT rice, I was personally involved in the biosafety, and we did not find any problem with it. As long as we don't find problem, we should use it. If somebody's come up with a study, hey, you have transferred the gene, and this gene is causing irritation or allergy, if there is a solid data, I would say, okay, man, don't use this thing. So there
Mm-hmm.
should be a pseudoscience behind that. Of course, there will be a sense of responsibility. I should not clone toxins in the food just to kill my enemies. That is ethical consideration. But if I feel that, if I see that the existence plants are not working under the new conditions, so for example, a plant which is growing good in Mexico is not necessarily the same plant will be doing good in Chitral in
Of
Pakistan.
course. Mm-hmm.
So you need a different breed, you need a different genetics. But
Yeah.
if you can modify that genetics with a tool, with a trick, there is no harm in that.
Mm-hmm.
So the growing situation of the climate, if new diseases are coming, plants will not work optimally in the optimal temperature because the optimality of the temperature is changing. So
Yeah.
the temperature is changing. So what is it? For example, so the genes are making proteins, proteins are enzymes, enzymes are doing functions. And those functions are done, enzymes are doing functions at a specific temperature. If that temperature is raised, or if that temperature is lower down, then the enzyme will not work. That means the
Of
system
course.
will not, biosystem will not work. Now,
Mm-hmm.
being a scientist, if I have the capacity to let them work, to make proteins which can stabilize the plant, whether that protein is coming in plant that I'm eating, coming from bacteria, that is coming from a virus, it does not matter. But of course, there will be a biosafety study. If the biosafety say, hey, there is no problem in that, we can consume that, why not? But the problem, the hysteria or the phobia, uh, these pseudo green movement has created, I have a problem with that. They do not have any data, and they are unnecessarily ridiculing the human interesting and very important discoveries, which is basically addressing the issues of the climate, addressing the issues of the infections, and addressing the issues of epidemics, for example. So I am a very pro GM or a pro gene modification person, and as long as it is solving our problem, and genes are transferred naturally. We are trans. There is evidence that coronavirus may be going into our genome. We have so many segments in our genome coming from the viruses. It
Yeah.
is naturally happening. They are integrating into our genome. But
Yeah.
if
Right.
essentially
True.
I integrate some fragment in the genome to correct a disease or to create a plant which is resistant to the bugs, I mean, look to the farmer. If a farmer is growing plants, kapas, for
Mm-hmm.
example, cotton, and at the end of the day, all his cotton field is destroyed by the American sundi,
Uh-huh.
what the farmer will get? He will be
Yeah.
starving.
Okay. Mm-hmm.
Instead of that, if he's using a seed which is genetically modified, which is killing the
Uh-huh.
bug spot if it's consumed the plant, and I'm not consuming it, I'm just taking it as a shot or something like that. But the question here is, what is wrong with it? There's no problem in it. But this whole idea of the Greenpeace and the green community, oh, genetically modified, you took gene from here and there, and that's a problem. I mean, I'm a pro GM, I'm a pro gene technique, or a pro genome editing person, and I have no problem. I will consume that food first if I offer to me.
Thank you so much, sir. Been a very amazing, wonderful, informative session, which I was also waiting for such a kind of session since long, and I was not getting a chance because of difference of timings or time zones, doctors, and some sort of experts or scientists through science side. I was not catching up with them, but thank you so much for that. Just I had now time to wrap up the session, and only a last question I want to pose, for this session. But definitely, we gotta bring a second part two of this biotechnology because it's important. People should know about a sort of biotechnology which is happening, in our environment or by human and like sort of a consumer. It is happening, we consuming it, so we should know. The last question we also touched upon, like a gene editing tool. There's a one term which is a sort of a CRISPR, and you know about it, cluster regularly interspace short palindromic repeats, a sort of gene editing, which allows a sort of a modification of DNA. How do you see it? What's your sort of a concept about it? And what is actually CRISPR? Because I know, I'm damn sure people, they don't know. A lot more
Yeah.
people, they don't have such awareness about CRISPR. So if you can shed some light on it. So this would be the last question of the session. In the meanwhile, if I just see any comment, we'll respond to that. Otherwise, after this question, then we have to close the session, and hopefully, inshallah, I would see you soon again to discuss the same things. And yeah, looking forward to that. Please go ahead for this last
Yeah, we,
question.
we we talked about the biotechnology, and the conventional biotechnology is that you are raising organisms in a reactor, a bacteria, or an insect, for example. We did not talk about the insect food that we will do in the next session. Insect being a food, or insect being a production factory. And the question here, that was more a conventional biotechnology. Then this biotechnology, conventional biotechnology, was taken over by the gene transfer, what we call genetic engineering, where we are taking one gene from one species, putting it into another species, and we are making a GM crop. Lately, I mean, in the last 1 decade, now this is more the genome editing. And in the genome editing, what you do, you are not introducing something from outside, rather, you are using the internal machinery to correct the genes. That is little more what we call like a more it will reduce the fear of those GM denial community, at least, that what you do, you are using a set of enzymes which is cutting DNA at one point, and then you are removing those bad parts of the genome, and then realigning them, and that become, like, for example, specifically in the gene therapy or the cancer therapies or something like that. So it is much more it's nothing, not so different from the gene transfer or genetically modified the gene technique. It's a form of the gene technique, but there we are using more sophisticated tools and internal rearrangement of the gene rather than taking the genes from outside. So it's nothing more than advanced genetic engineering and advanced gene transfer by reorganizing the genome of the species rather than taking something from the outside, and that is much more efficient as compared to the normal conventional gene transfer technology, the CRISPR case, and the genome editing. So it's a modification, or advancement of the conventional uh, gene transfer technology into genome editing, and then of course there is an involvement of the computer science or the AI that can tell you where is the defect and where you can cut and where you can insert the gene and how they can realign. So there is nothing special. It's just a technological advancement from the normal conventional gene transfer tool.
Mhm. So, are there any risk of using it, or I think you're saying more efficient than the uh, previous one?
I mean,
What was the?
the risk is a collateral damage. Sometimes it is not risky today; it might be risky tomorrow. Same, for example, when people identify petrol or the fossil fuel-based economies, nobody thought that it will become
Yeah.
a big headache for us, and it is a big headache for us now. There's always collateral damage. We don't know what will happen, but of course, I mean, the ethical regulations. The human is basically what we call ethical animal, or they call human is an animal of understanding symbols, no? And symbols is basically tell you the dangers. So symbolism has importance, and that is understood by the humans more than other species. Apparently, as I said, it is a more advanced tool to for the gene transfer or gene modification. So in the conventional things, we are taking longer time. The error chances are more. They are undirected. Here, they are much more directed. So if, for example, I'm taking a plant and I'm putting a gene in there, the gene can go to this gene and this gene. It can go into it can also disrupt internal genes, for example. But
Right.
here in the genome editing, the CRISPR-Cas technology, it is much more precise that you cut it this page, you cut it this place, you take a segment here, and you take a segment there. So it's much more directed, and the chances of error are less, and the
Oh.
transformation efficiency is much more. Otherwise, it's nothing different than a normal gene transfer methods and methodologies. Well, thank you very much for
It
having
was amazing. It was
uh,
amazing session
very
this
wonderful
time,
to
and
you.
thank you so much
Yeah,
to give me an opportunity to do a session with you. And I really enjoyed it. I
yeah,
really
always
enjoyed it, and
welcome.
my viewers also.
Yeah, you are doing an amazing job.
Thank
Sometime
you.
this the author of this book, Noel Hariri. One time he said that people, those who are making discoveries, they are less influential than those who are fictionalizing the discoveries. So when we are fictionalizing the discoveries, then we are reaching to the community. And important is that the scientific discovery must be reached to the communities. Otherwise, it will not create any effect. So people
Right.
those who define E is equal to mc square, it is nothing in its essence. But if you explore it, unfold it to the people, then it creates to innovations and all these. So it's a so the benefit would be if it is reached to common people, then they are thinking how to convert this into products, into the human ease. So making discoveries and fictionalizing discoveries for the community to understand what we call the science communication. I'm teaching a course on science communication, and I think you are doing a great job by keeping our community, our diaspora, or maybe people of our country more informed. It is very important to keep them informed so that they make better decisions for their own self and for their own for the coming generation. I thank you all, and it was so lovely talking to you. I enjoyed my interaction with you.
Thank you so much, and you have a lovely rest of your day. And soon I'm going to see you again for part two. So take
Thank you.
care of yourself, and bye bye from my side. Assalamu alaikum. Bye.
Bye.